In recent years, a specter has once again reared its ugly head across Europe. The specter of anti-Semitism. A little over 7 decades after the Holocaust, anti-Jewish attacks are on the rise again in Europe.
What crimes have Jews committed to deserve 2,000 years of persecution? What do you think?
The mood among French Jews is very gloomy right now. A dozen people have been killed in France in recent years simply because they were Jews.
In Poland, the genie is out of the bottle. Anti-Semitism is becoming acceptable.
Anti-Semitism is a state of mind that is not a matter of one country. It's an international phenomenon.
Anti-Semitism has become much more common in Europe. The explanations for this phenomenon seem as varied as the proposals for how to deal with it. For this report, we traveled to Berlin, Paris, and Warsaw to talk to people who've experienced anti-Semitism and to discuss possible solutions. What is it like to be a Jew in Europe today? In recent years, Jewish life, culture, and traditions have enjoyed a renaissance in Germany. But prayer rooms and kindergartens are often located in closed areas, away from the street and out of the public eye, protected by police due to fears of anti-Semitic attacks. Today, Germany is home to about 200,000 Jews. Their numbers have increased almost continuously since the 1990s. Many have emigrated from the former Soviet Union. Some have even come from Israel. The most popular destination is Berlin, the very city where the Nazis organized the extermination of European Jews.
Antisemitism simply means hostility directed against Jews as Jews. They are subjected to this hostility because of characteristics that are often attributed to them. They are hated for being something they are not.
Anti-Semitism is a wide-ranging concept. Some people use it to explain certain complexities that are found in today's society. It helps them to find scapegoats.
Anti-Semitism is an assault on the democratic culture of our society. So it's more than just an attack on Jews as such.
Berlin has the largest Jewish community in Germany. In December 2017, an ugly anti-Semitic incident was caught on video in the city's leafy Schöneberg district, outside Feinberg's restaurant. A traditional menorah is displayed in the front window. Some of the art on the walls features the Star of David. The restaurant specializes in traditional Sephardic Jewish cuisine. One day, owner Yorai Feinberg and his girlfriend were standing outside, taking a break, when they were approached by a man who was apparently drunk.
Ihr seid gemein. Ihr seid einfach nur gemein.
Okay.
Ja,
warum?
Einfach nur verrückt.
Weil ich Hummus und Falafel mache, bin ich gemein?
2000 Jahre wollt ihr das nicht kapieren, dass die einen so sind und die anderen so sind.
Ich denke, das ist umgekehrt, aber ich will nicht
verstehen, was habe ich jetzt? Nein, 2000 Jahre.
Sie kommen jetzt, ich rauche hier eine Zigarette und ich trinke Kaffee. Sie kommen zu mir und beschuldigen mich, dass wir sind verrückt. Warum? Weil ich Zigaretten und
hier bist.
Gas rauche?
Weil du hier bist.
Und?
In meinem Land. In meinem Land.
Ich wusste nicht, was von mir will.
At first, I didn't know what he wanted.
Und dann, es war immer
And then things
schlimmer,
just got worse.
schlimmer. Hat
He
angefangen,
started
dann,
coming out with all these
mehr und mehr
anti-Semitic
über
prejudices about Jews
Juden,
and money
antisemitische
and the
Vorurteile
Holocaust
zu sagen,
and so forth.
Geld und Holocaust und so weiter.
Es geht nur ums Geld bei euch. Bei euch geht nur um Geld. Ja.
Und bei Ihnen nur um
Money.
Hass. Bleiben Sie
Bei
bitte
euch
weg
geht's
von
nur um
mir,
Geld.
weil Sie spuken, okay?
Aber du kriegst deine Rechnung. Du kriegst
spucken
deine Rechnung.
die ganze
Du
Zeit.
kriegst deine Rechnung in 5 Jahren oder 10 Jahren kriegst du deine Rechnung.
Okay. Gut.
Und deine ganze Familie und deine ganze Sippe hier.
The Feinberg case prompted a new discussion about anti-Semitism in Berlin, which has a particularly high incidence of verbal and physical attacks. 947 cases were documented in 2017, 60% more than the year before. Criminal offenses or threats can be reported to an anti-Semitism research and information center in Berlin.
There are a number of right-wing extremist and populist groups, and then there are those that can be described as left-wing and anti-imperialist. And some groups subscribe to conspiracy theories. And then we have the so-called anti-Israel activists who are opposed to the existence of the State of Israel. There is also the Islamist brand of anti-Semitism. And then we have a wide range of groups that occupy the political middle ground.
Wie Sie schon gesagt haben, ein breites Spektrum, was wir als politische Mitte beschreiben.
According to official figures, right-wingers are involved in the majority of anti-Semitic incidents that have been reported. Some far-right politicians, notably from the populist AfD, call for an end to what they see as an excessive focus on Germany's Nazi past, including the Holocaust.
Die Deutschen, also unser Volk, sind das einzige Volk der Welt, das sich ein Denkmal der Schande in das Herz seiner Hauptstadt gepflanzt hat.
Wir haben das Gefühl, dass die Positionen, die vormals
It seems that comments that people used to make at their local pub or in the privacy of their home are now made fairly openly at public events and on social media sites.
Aber auch sozusagen in den sozialen Netzwerken verbreitet werden.
These kinds of accusations have always been part of German society, but now they've become socially acceptable to a certain extent, mostly due to the popularity of the AfD party.
Hitler und die Nazis sind nur ein Vogelschiss in über 1000 Jahre erfolgreicher deutscher Geschichte.
Tatsächlich muss man sich, glaube ich, fragen,
what sorts of answers does anti-Semitism provide? Well, for example, it allows people to identify with a certain philosophy, like nationalism. And that creates a sort of national anti-Semitism, where the Jews are always the outsiders. Also, anti-Semitism helps some people to make sense of the woes of modern society.
We're now on our way to Warsaw, the capital of Poland. Until recently, Poland was widely regarded as a paragon of modern democratic progression in post-communist Eastern Europe. But in the 2015 national elections, a right-wing populist party took control of both houses of parliament. A new spirit of nationalism has caused concern among many, and not just in Poland. The country's Independence Day is November 11th. Celebrations across Poland often provide a platform for the expression of resurgent ultra-nationalist sentiment. Radical right-wingers have essentially taken over the main Independence Day celebrations in Warsaw, and activists from all over Europe travel here to join them. Over the past decade, attendance at this event has jumped from just 500 to nearly 100,000. This is the office of a group that features prominently in the Independence Day event, the All-Polish Youth Organization. The movement is based on a student group that was founded in 1922. The original group favored anti-Semitic policies, such as limiting the number of Jews in universities, Some members supported Italy's fascist dictator, Benito Mussolini. Today's version has the same motto: the nation is the highest temporal good. The group's members are all under 36 and all eerily polite.
Benito.
And Benito is the office dog's name.
Young people appreciate the fact that we respect Poland's history and try to preserve it. We consider ourselves a national movement, and we try to show people that they are part of that nation. That's why the Independence Day March is so popular.
For us nationalists, it's not enough to just have a passport that says you're a citizen. There's a lot more to it than that. A nation is composed of three basic elements: ethnic, cultural, and religious affiliation.
I would like to add that Poland is proud of its history because there are hardly any dark chapters in that history.
In their eyes, dark chapters in Polish history usually involve past attacks on the country by Germany and Russia, while Poland itself is always innocent. But propaganda materials distributed by all Polish youth often feature nationalist symbols, a certain patriotic mysticism, and soul-stirring music. And this is where associations with former times resurface.
In the last couple of years, what we have seen in Poland is a very spectacular rise in different types of xenophobic expressions in the public sphere. We can observe it very clearly since the European refugee crisis. In a way, I think that this outbreak of xenophobia in Poland since 2015 finally also resulted in an outbreak of a new wave of antisemitism. I think it shows that when the floodgates of xenophobia are open, sooner or later, it also translates into a wave of hostility against the Jews.
Since the Law and Justice Party came to power in 2015, the mood in the country has changed. Earlier this year, Parliament approved a law that banned comments linking Poland with Nazi war crimes, such as the phrase Polish death camps. Most of them were located in occupied Poland but were run by the Nazis. And Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki caused a global outcry after referring to Jewish perpetrators during the Second World War.
There's no anti-Semitism in Poland. There's never been an era in Polish history, not even so much as a decade, in which racism was significant. That's due to our deeply rooted belief in Christianity, and specifically Catholicism, that religious faith requires us to respect our neighbors.
Senator Jarin was apparently unaware of this demonstration in Wrocław in 2015, featuring what is clearly an effigy of a Jew. Some say it represented George Soros, a prominent Jewish investor and philanthropist who promotes liberal and internationalist policies. Soros is despised by many on the far right around the world.
Nationalism in Poland is first of all, the right-wing phenomenon. It's the conservative discourse. It's the discourse that tries to put into the wider context the matters of, independence, pride, honor, and etc. And somewhere there, the Jewish history seems not to fit in, apparently. And this has got very dangerous repercussions for us as for the Jewish community.
Every year, crowds gather in Wrocław on Independence Day to hear the preachings of Jacek Miedlar, a former Catholic priest.
Żądamy całkowitego i prawnego
Komplette gesetzliche Verbot von Antipolonismus, Banderismus, Islamismus, Talmudismus und Marxismus. Stimmt ihr mir zu?
Z tego miejsca pytam rząd
Regierung von Recht und Gerechtigkeit. Habt ihr Mut dazu? Oder müsst ihr vielleicht zuerst eure jüdischen Herren in Amerika fragen?
We drive to the central Polish city of Kalisz to meet Miedlar. His blog features a traditional nationalist motto, translated into English, God, Honor, Fatherland. During our interview on secretive-looking premises, Miedlar outlined his views on the issue of Jews in Poland.
Unfortunately, right now, both those who are hated by the Jews and those who speak uncomfortable truths are called anti-Semites. It's important to note that every official Jewish organization in Poland identifies with values that could be attributed to cultural Marxism. Those are values that we, as traditionalists, Catholics, Christians, right-wingers and nationalists, regard as false ideology. This ideology leads to a moral decay, defeatism, and, as Catherine the Great wrote, the enslavement of entire countries.
We've returned to Warsaw. The government's new law that would criminalize blaming Polish people for any crimes committed during the Holocaust sparked international criticism, particularly from Israel. Parliament later backed down and decided that violations of the law would result in only civil instead of criminal penalties. This is the Museum of the History of Polish Jews. The first Jews arrived in what is now Poland in the 10th century. At the beginning of World War II, Poland had more Jewish residents than any other European country, about 3.4 million. Only about 200,000 survived the Holocaust. After the war, many Polish Jews emigrated to Israel and the US, leaving a population of just 40,000. This video shown in the museum shows Polish student demonstrations in 1968. The country's communist government used the protest as an excuse to launch a campaign against so-called Zionist sympathizers. Many Jews were forced to leave the Communist Party. Others had to resign their teaching jobs at schools and universities. By 1971, more than 14,000 Polish Jews had left the country in desperation.
A number of comparisons and similarities has been drawn between the discourse of 1968 and today's discourse, both regarding Jews as a foreign factor in the state and diminishing the meaning of the Holocaust as the biggest tragedy in our history. Those who experienced March 1968, those who had to leave Poland or who stayed in Poland, they see the similarities. They can compare the climate of 1968 to today's climate.
The core vision of fascism is still present in the European consciousness. And I would say that the core vision of fascism is the vision of total cultural homogeneity. And it's the vision that is directed against all types of minorities, ethnic, religious, ideological, political. And of course the Jews are the sort of paradigmatic minority.
Risk is an aptly named clothing label developed by Jewish designer Antonina Samecka. Her fashions often feature Jewish symbols and Hebrew language phrases. Samecka says she wants to rebrand Jewish identity and show its modern and positive aspects. She says a lot of Germans buy her clothes. At the same time, Samecka has strengthened her own Jewish identity and her relationship with the local Jewish community.
I believe that in Poland, the fear of outsiders is an emotionally charged issue. And there are historical reasons for that. Throughout its history, Poland has been overrun by other states, and people are still deeply afraid of such invasions. In addition, we are an ethnically homogeneous society. Everyone's Caucasian, and they all look similar.
A lot of people are surprised to learn that Sametska is Jewish. She's never experienced incidents of anti-Semitism and says that it's safe for Jews to wear a yarmulke or indeed her own clothing designs on the streets of Warsaw. But she's still concerned about current developments.
There are social tensions in Poland, just as there are in every country. But here, the hatred is not directed exclusively against Jews. People also hate gays, Arabs, and black people. There are simply a lot of people who hate others because they're different. And that hatred can take different forms. But I don't think that the Jews are any worse off than, for example, gays. Period.
Some Polish Jews like to joke that there would be anti-Semitism in Poland even if there were no Jews there. Our next stop is France, home to Europe's largest Jewish community. An estimated 500,000 Jews live here, more than in any other country except Israel and the United States. But in recent years, France has been hit by a new wave of anti-Semitic attacks. And this has prompted many French Jews to fear for their safety. In 2015, 4 Jewish hostages were gunned down in a kosher supermarket in Vincennes. The perpetrators' parents were Muslim immigrants from Mali. In 2012, 4 people, a rabbi and 3 children, were shot and killed outside a Jewish school in Toulouse. The gunmen's parents were immigrants from Algeria. The Sephardic chief rabbi of Jerusalem, Shlomo Amar, spoke at the funeral and said that in every generation there are people whose primary goal is to annihilate the Jews. In recent years, 3 further Jews, Mireille Knoll, Sarah Halimi, and Ilan Halimi, were murdered by Muslims in anti-Semitic attacks in France.
Generally speaking, the French are not anti-Semitic. They're just not interested in that sort of thing. Until about 20 years ago, there were no public expressions of anti-Semitism here. The major problems that we face in France today are not only the existence of traditional anti-Semitism, even if expressed very subtly, but also a brand new kind of anti-Semitism that established itself very rapidly.
Muslim-based anti-Semitism is definitely a problem. Of course, not all Muslims are anti-Semites. You can't make general statements like that. But there are ordinary Muslims who have no education and who've come here from North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, or the Middle East with classic anti-Semitic prejudices. It's part of the cultural environment they grew up in.
The situation is serious. In the 3 years since the attacks in Toulouse and at the kosher supermarket in Paris, a number of French Jews have left the country because they're scared. I'm concerned about the future of French Jews and the future of France.
This is the Paris suburb of Sarcelles, home to one of France's biggest Jewish communities. It has approximately 12,000 Jewish residents and an estimated 40,000 Christians and Muslims. On the surface, the different faiths live together peacefully, more or less, but tensions are never far away. In July 2014, a pro-Palestinian demonstration that had been banned by the authorities got out of hand. Amidst resulting street battles between Arab and Jewish youths, protesters attacked Jewish stores and a synagogue. In January this year, an unknown assailant slashed the face of a 15-year-old Jewish girl. A few weeks later, an 8-year-old Jewish boy was beaten up. Historian Georges Bensoussan is an expert on Jewish communities in Arab countries and France. This summer, he was acquitted on charges of making defamatory statements about Muslims receiving anti-Semitism from their mother's milk. He explains why Jews enjoy living in Sarcelles despite the inter-ethnic tensions.
Sarcelles is often called a Little Jerusalem. The Jews in the region around Paris tend to live in one district, not scattered around the city. They feel safe there with their shops and schools right nearby. It gives them a sense of security. And don't forget, 52,000 Jews left France for Israel between 2000 and 2016. That's a huge number. It's more than the entire Jewish community in Belgium, and twice as much as the one in Italy.
C'est énorme, c'est plus que la communauté juive de Belgique. C'est 2 fois la communauté juive d'Italie.
Many French Jews who emigrate to Israel end up in the city of Netanya, about 30 kilometers north of Tel Aviv. Some local residents now call the city the Little Côte d'Azur. Among the new arrivals are the Hamon family. They arrived here from Val d'Oise, 30 kilometers north of Paris. They left France in 2017 after they were subjected to repeated anti-Semitic insults by their neighbors.
I think that Europe has a real problem with anti-Semitism. At one time, some people were openly anti-Jewish. Today it's different. Now they say they're anti-Israeli. It's the same thing, and we experience it firsthand. We don't understand why. Jews are a very small people, globally speaking. People get really angry at us, and we genuinely have no idea why.
I feared for my children's safety. I didn't think there was any future for them in France. So I decided to take them to a place that was safe.
I think Islamization is getting worse and worse. In fact, I'm sure of it. So I invite all Jews who live in Europe to come to Israel. There's room for everyone, so they should come here.
Other Jews have decided to stay in France and to defy anti-Semitism in their own way. Rabbi Michel Sarfati emigrated to France from Morocco and has lived here since the 1960s. He had a successful career as a professional basketball player and was ordained a rabbi in 1985. His synagogue is located in the southern Paris suburb of Ris-Orangis. Sarfati has worked for years to promote better relations between Jews and Muslims. He travels regularly through the suburbs of Paris to engage Muslims in dialogue. He also organizes joint sports events. Once a year, he and an imam conduct a special bus tour around the country. Sarfati is 75 years old. He spent the last several decades searching for truth, peace, and reconciliation, even if some call him a kind of Don Quixote.
Should we speak in the name of religion or as citizens? I promise to do my best to be a friend to Muslims and to always represent them and Islam correctly, and to promote friendship between Jews and Muslims. For Muslims, the Quran, Kosher food for Jews and halal for Muslims.
It took a lot of courage for Sarfati to set up his friendship bus 10 years ago. But ultimately, I think he's failed, because most of the Muslims don't listen to him. You can understand why when you consider Muslim children who were born in France. Their parents were also born here, but their grandparents came from Algeria, Morocco, or Tunisia. They say, I'm not French. They don't even say I'm Tunisian or Moroccan. They just say, I'm a Muslim.
Your homeland?
Palestine.
Palestine.
My country is Algeria.
Not here.
No, this is not my homeland.
I'm Moroccan, but my home is France.
Okay.
Jews and Muslims practice circumcision.
It's almost the same religion.
Really?
No, but they are getting closer.
Salam, see, the same letters.
So there's not much difference.
A gift.
Thank you.
Shalom, shalom.
Salam, salam.
Salam, shalom.
Salam, salam. Je ne dois pas me laisser
I can't afford to be pessimistic.
verser dans le pessimisme.
In general, Jews have always contributed to Western culture.
À la culture.
But they've always stood their ground,
Il a
too.
toujours résisté. Le pays d'Émile Zola.
In France, the land of Émile Zola, half the people defended Dreyfus, and the church protected French Jews during World War II. Today, the French must use Western culture to help fight antisemitism.
Devient un rempart contre l'antisémitisme.
The huge influx of new immigrants and refugees to Germany that began in 2015 has prompted a discussion about Muslim anti-Semitism. This is Berlin's Neukölln district. 44% of the people who live here are either immigrants or descended from them. Some critics say Neukölln is not safe for Jews and claim that multicultural integration has failed here. The authorities say that 94% of all anti-Semitic crimes are committed by right-wingers. By contrast, researchers at the University of Bielefeld interviewed a number of German Jews about anti-Semitic attacks. 81% of those surveyed indicated that the alleged perpetrators were Muslims. Armin Lange is a Jewish theologian. Lange promotes peaceful coexistence between Muslims and Jews, but some Jewish critics say Lange goes too far in his efforts to improve relations with Muslims. Right now, Lange is on his way to an interfaith forum at the Dar al-Salam Mosque in Neukölln. The mosque is regularly monitored by Berlin security authorities because of its alleged ties to the Muslim Brotherhood organization. Lange says that dialogue is the best way to bring Muslims and Jews together.
We have a multicultural society here in Neukölln. We do face some challenges, and we can find out more about them by talking to the local residents and taking part in public discussions. But there are also a number of opportunities here, and I am committed to not only talking about the challenges, which include anti-Semitism among Muslims. That's a hot topic right now among Germans. But I also want to discuss those opportunities. For example, how Jews and Muslims can work together in Neukölln and elsewhere.
Zum Beispiel über jüdisch-muslimische Verflechtungen in Neukölln und darüber hinaus.
Dankeschön.
There are, of course, Muslims who are anti-Semitic. That's a fact, and we can't deny it. But anti-Semitism is unfortunately a homegrown concept. It started right here in Europe, and it's been here for decades, even centuries. This is a problem of society, and we have to fight it.
This is the annual Al-Quds Day demonstration in central Berlin. The event's origins date back to 1979, when Iran's supreme leader called on Muslims around the world to support the rights of Palestinians and to oppose Zionism. Most of the protesters are Muslims, but there are also left-wingers present, and even some anti-Zionist, ultra-Orthodox Jews.
Sie sind die Feinde der Menschheit. Das System des Zionismus ist das Krebsgeschwür der Menschheit.
Al-Quds Day is the biggest public anti-Semitic event in Germany. I can't believe that the authorities still allow it to take place. And sadly, the German people haven't yet realized that the philosophy of these people will eventually destroy German democracy.
I'm a Palestinian. I hate Israel, but not the Jews themselves. You've got to make that distinction. I'm opposed to Zionism, but not Jews. People forget that in my country, Palestinians are killed illegally and expelled from their homes.
I'm convinced that anti-Semitism is quite often expressed as allegedly legitimate criticism of Israel. And the vehemence with which that criticism is directed against Israel, for example, for its policies toward the Palestinians, is completely disproportionate. For me, it clearly constitutes anti-Semitism.
The Israeli-Palestinian conflict dominates relations between the Jewish world and the Arab and Muslim worlds. It is a bloody territorial conflict that is yet to be resolved. Opinion on this conflict is divided, and that wide range of opinions has to be taught in schools. Everyone in German society, including Muslims and Jews, have to learn all sides of the conflict and understand that everyone has their own interpretation of the truth. There is no single truth.
Breakfast always tastes better when my mom makes it. I don't know why, it just does.
German integration officials would like to see more young people like Hussein Youssef taking part in efforts to ease tensions between Muslims and Jews. Hussein is a student representative at his school. His parents came to Germany from Lebanon. His family is religious, but they fit perfectly well into German society. Hussein's older brothers are at college studying political science and ecology, but he hasn't decided on a career yet. This is the Ernst Abbe High School in Neukölln. 90% of the students here are either migrants or are descended from them. Here, like at similar schools, officials have launched a number of initiatives to try to prevent racism and anti-Semitism, including educational programs aimed at raising awareness of these problems.
At our high school, we have one of the highest proportions of migrant students among all the high schools in Neukölln. And it's a relatively small school. It's right on the main road. But inside you can hardly tell. We try to help students with all their problems, whether it's family difficulties or poverty or other issues.
We can have hundreds of official experts investigating anti-Semitism and put together all kinds of figures, but that won't help us resolve these problems. The key is to maintain a dialogue on this situation.
Dialog suchen.
You do come across anti-Semitism in a lot of schoolyards. So I was pleasantly surprised to find that in this school, they've worked on preventive education programs. And the students have done better in those programs than we could have imagined.
Jews and Muslims simply have to learn to get along and accept everyone as human beings. They need to put that into practice in their neighborhoods. Muslims and Jews should make friends with each other and do things together. That way, they can show that they're just people, whether they're Christians, Jews, or Muslims. We're part of the same hand.
Walking hand in hand to a brighter future. Hope does exist, although many remain skeptical.
The Jewish people have been around for 2,000 years, and we will find a way to survive. The problem right now is, will the Jews and their culture be able to survive in Europe? And that question is being decided right now.
If anti-Semitism continues to grow like it has, it's possible that in a few decades, all the Jews in France will have left the country. They're already leaving other European countries. Sometimes I ask myself whether we will gradually see Jews fleeing from everywhere in Europe.
Fuite des Juifs des pays d'Europe pour aller ailleurs.
Geschichte, nämlich Berlin trägt Kippa. Wunderbar. Ich habe noch nie in meinem Leben, und ich bin oft in Israel gewesen, aber noch nie so viele Kippas gesehen wie heute. Das seid ihr.